On behalf of the Architecture and Design Society, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to this exciting presentation of current building projects at the University of Chicago. We are thrilled to welcome this important roster of designers to speak to you tonight, a true testament to the ambition and vision of the university. Many of you are no doubt familiar with the work of award-winning designers Anne Beha, James Carpenter, Todd Williams, and Billy Tsen, whose work appears in important American cultural venues as the Cranbrook Academy of Art, the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and the New World Trade Center. While their full introductions are forthcoming, I would like to convey how exciting it is to see the University of Chicago as a galvanizing force for architectural innovation, inviting each of these firms to complete, I believe, their first buildings in the city. As Chicago architects build around the world and around the globe, it is equally important that our built environment reflect this expanded dialogue and network of architectural creativity. Each firm has been chosen for a project tailored to their primary area of expertise, with Todd Williams and Billy Tsen adding to the Logan Center to their repertoire of buildings for the arts, joining the acclaimed American Folk Art Museum in New York and the new home of the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia. Anne Beha will be giving new life and identity to the former Chicago Theological Seminary, just as she has done for important historical buildings on the campus of the University of Pennsylvania and many buildings in the city of Boston. Last but certainly not least, James Carpenter's interventions on the University of Chicago campus follow his long career of design and engineering innovation using light and glass to activate architectural space. I am very happy to now introduce the man responsible for spearheading this building campaign, Steve Wiesenthal, the Associate Vice President and University Architect. In concert with a diverse array of voices on the Committee of Campus Planning, his vision focuses as much on large-scale architectural projects as the less dramatic but arguably even more important impact of decisions to open the campus quadrangle up to the city, to renew pedestrian life on campus, and to focus attention on the historic Midway to strengthen the connections linking the main campus to its neighbors to the south. Steve Wiesenthal came to Chicago in 2008 to oversee this important plan for transformation, building on his successful career as a university planner and administrator at the University of California, San Francisco, another campus that many of you will know has garnered recent numerous architecture awards, and the University of Pennsylvania Health System, as well as working as an architect and planner in the office of Venturi Scott Brown, where he completed projects on Harvard's campus, the University of California, Los Angeles, and Dartmouth, among many others. We are absolutely thrilled to partner with the University of Chicago for this exciting program that illustrates how institutional growth can serve to enrich the built environment and allow for important moments of architectural innovation. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Steve Wiesenthal.
Thank you very much, Allison and Tom and the Art Institute of Chicago, and welcome. I'm so glad you could join us. We are in the midst of a significant design and construction program at the University of Chicago, and it's a true honor to be working with great architects, both locally and from afar. So tonight we've invited 4 architects from outside Chicago to join us in discussing their work on campus in the context of their practices. A note on the title of this discussion. So the gray city refers not to the sometimes daunting amount of gray matter on the University of Chicago campus, but rather the limestone of the architecture. Transformed is for you to decide. If not after this evening, then perhaps after a visit just 7 short miles south to visit our campus. So early in the 1890s, 2 enormously ambitious projects were conceived on the south side of Chicago. One was the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition, Daniel Burnham's grand neoclassical White City, including the extravagant, exotic Midway, and including the world's first Ferris wheel, from which this view of campus is seen. The very first building on campus is right here, Cobb Hall. By contrast, the founding of the University of Chicago was all about dignified, academic, scholarly pursuit. And instant credibility could be achieved through collegiate Gothic gray limestone quadrangles. The founding president, William Rainey Harper, actually declared that there should be no inaugural parties, lest they give the impression that the campus hadn't existed already for centuries. And perhaps there was enough partying going on right across the street. So we are still in a very ambitious program 120 years later. This chart represents basically from the first within the first 50 years of the campus, it was growing at a rate of roughly 750,000 square feet per decade. The next 50 years, 1.75 million square feet per decade. And for the first 2 decades of the century, we are building roughly 3 million square feet per decade, which also translates to building about 40% as much square footage as was built in the entire preceding history of the campus. So as we build, it's hugely important to not only look at meeting the individual programmatic needs of each of our projects, but also to make sure that every single project enhances the greater campus community. There are 4 design principles. I won't quiz you on them later, but I just want to mention them because they really do infuse and inform everything we do. The first is about promoting the exchange of ideas. Our campus is full of buildings and spaces that we intend to be all about reinforcing and facilitating interaction among students, faculty, visitors, and others. And that's something that is at the forefront of everything we do. And I think you'll see with the projects being presented and discussed tonight, that influence. Fostering stewardship is a second principle, really about our legacy, about the continuity of what we've inherited and the durability for the future of what we build. Enhancing environmental sustainability is key to everything we do today. Contributing to both the local health as well as the impact of our work in the global sense. And then the fourth principle is about strengthening the identity and character of the campus. And that may, too, be very much what this evening's discussion is all about. So here's a computer model of the campus. Everything in yellow is university buildings. It all began in the early 1890s with the quads, very much inward focused by design, excluding the distractions and the evils of the outside world. Devil in the White City had not yet been authored, but the founders knew what lurked outside the confines of academia. So the campus, as a result, was framed by one of Frederick Law Olmsted's greatest urban park systems, but historically, the university campus was not fully engaged, opening, or welcoming to that context. So in order to achieve that, there are basically 3 overarching themes that are now guiding our efforts to enhance the place of the campus in the city and in surrounding context. The first is about opening up, about looking outward as well as inward to engage more directly with the surrounding city. This is a diagram that talks about Ellis Avenue, which is the primary north-south street, as well as 58th Street, and thinking about them as vibrant streetscapes and intersections that can enhance the sense of arrival, the openness, the connectivity of the campus to its neighborhoods. Strengthening the core is a second theme. The core, the main quads they are the heart and soul of the campus. It's where the original buildings are, the university's identity and much of its teaching and non-science research activity is taking place within these quadrangles. So programmatically and physically, we're making the quads and the primary east-west pathway of 58th Street more welcoming and active. Here is a before and after of within the main quads. This was a step we took just 2 years ago in 2009 when, with Chicago landscape architect Peter Shout, we began to turn the main quadrangles into much more of a pedestrian-oriented environment. That's very much informed by that first design principle of creating spaces for the active exchange of ideas. The next step, as illustrated in this rendering looking east from the main quadrangle, will be the transformation of 5757 South University Avenue, the former home of the Chicago Theological Seminary, into a new academic head space. Ann Beha, one of our panelists this evening, who wrote her MIT thesis on the reuse of ecclesiastical architecture, is the principal in charge of one of the, quote, top 5 architectural practices in the US, according to Architect Magazine. She brings tremendous and award-winning creativity to the adaptive reuse of historic structures and sensitivity to designing new architecture in the civic realm. Anne is both a thoughtful collaborator and a force of nature when needed. And this holds true, I should say, for all of our panelists this evening. It's great fun to work with her. The third overarching theme being addressed in projects by our other panelists this evening is the desire to more effectively link the campus north and south of the Midway. We're seeking to turn the Midway Plaisance, which is the green of this view, from the experience as sometimes a barrier into a dynamic meeting ground of the university campus and the truly amazing public park system. This view I absolutely love. It's from one of the tower of Rockefeller Chapel, and I think it illustrates one of the challenges we have on campus in linking north and south of the Midway, and that is that very little is visible from the north looking to the south. In fact, many don't even know, who are unfamiliar with the campus, many don't know that there is a portion of the University of Chicago campus extending south of the Midway. So Anne will be followed by Jamie Carpenter, who will discuss 2 projects he's working on with us. The first one, which is illustrated here, again, a before and after, is the Midway Crossings, where we look on Ellis Avenue as well as on Woodlawn Avenue, and soon to be this summer the 3rd crossing, to improve the narrow, poorly lit sidewalks and turn them into an incredible experience to traverse the Midway, linking north and south. And I think it's probably okay to quote Blair Kamen here. Is it Blair, you? Yeah, okay. I will. So in his article in the Tribune when this opened, he began by saying, "You've heard of the bean? Meet the lightsabers." And he was quoting our students who had nicknamed them within the first week, I think. And he went on in his review. Are you the students who called it the lights? Thank you. Love it. So he concluded his review to say that this is a model for how lighting can change our perception of a moribund urban zone and bring it new life. Jamie is also collaborating with HOK architects on the William Eckert Research Center, housing the University of Chicago's esteemed physicists, and will house its new program in molecular engineering. Jamie studied architecture and sculpture at Rhode Island School of Design, consulted with Corning Glassworks for a decade in research and development, and then founded a design studio focused on light in all its forms, past, present, and future. His work is a fascinating and energetic synthesis of art, engineering, and architecture that's changing our relationships with nature and physics in the urban environment. Jamie received a MacArthur Fellowship in 2004 and was originally introduced to us by a couple of University of Chicago physicists. I saw Heinrich here and his partner Sid Nagel, partner in research, I should say, who are now working with Jamie as a visiting scholar in our Gray Center for Arts and Inquiry. The Riva and David Logan Center for the Arts is all about linking north and south of the Midway, as well as turning outward to our surrounding communities to engage around the arts. Towering height, vibrant programming, and intriguing architecture are already beginning to dramatically transform the campus experience. And we're still in punch listing. I keep reminding everybody of that. Todd Williams and Billy Chen, the Logan Center architects, are known across the world for their deliberate, tactile, and poetic qualities inherent in their well-crafted buildings. Through numerous project awards and their elections to the American Academy of Arts and Letters, Todd and Billy's work has been recognized for its grace, optimism, and integrity. I encourage you to not only see, but also to touch the Logan Center and Todd and Billy's other projects spanning the country. So I'll turn the floor over to our first panelist, Ann Beha, but first I want to remind, does this t-shirt look familiar? I want to remind some of us about a fundamental aspect of learning, researching, and working at the University of Chicago, where we have a culture of rigorous and critical, I should say in a good way, inquiry, with a rich and often iterative relationship between theory and practice. Which came first can be a lively debate, right? So I've asked Ann, Jamie, and Todd and Billy to discuss their work for the University of Chicago at the intersections of theory and practice. And we intend to save a good amount of time for questions and discussions with each other and with all of you at the end. So Ann Beha, the floor is yours.
It is a complete gift to my practice to work in Chicago. It is also a gift to work with Gensler, who's our associate architect on this job, and Turner, to make our dreams come true. Remember that. I think that there is probably, for me, no greater part of practice and more in debate than the way in which we treat our heritage, and the discovery that our heritage constantly changes, constantly reinvents itself, constantly reasserts a value system. So when you look at anybody's work, you always wonder, well, you know, where did it come from? And I did bring some work to talk about, I wouldn't call so much theory, you know me, I'm German, no theory, but the framework, the framework through which my practice has arrived at certain kinds of balances between stewardship and intervention. Because I do believe that while one must guard and investigate and research and broaden the notion of patrimony constantly in life, it is also, I think, the right and responsibility of every generation to assert its own identity in the urban and campus and rural and built world around us. And that's what I think our office is trying to do. Somehow strike this balance between stewardship and innovation or intervention and change. So it's a framework, not so much a philosophy, that is constantly challenging us. And in showing work, I'm just going to say, look for the gestures. There's a story behind each project. Look for the primary gestures. They've created a value system in our practice. And when you see this and see that, which is the addition that now incorporates the building you just saw, it's an immediate value system about access and visibility for a library rather than making it a repository. When you see this, you see that that kind of change will change the way people use the building and see their campus. When you see this, you'll look at the intervention, which brings a moment between the old and the new on the left and the old on the right. So even this building from the 70s is part of the culture of this place, this university, but it is changed. Similarly, in Oregon, this new Center for Contemporary Art in a former Masonic temple is changed. And it's changed through a program of preservation and stewardship in balance with a gesture about identity, a kind of billboard urbanistically, and a sense that art and views of art, this was their former streetscape between the original art building and the Masonic temple, art can be brought into the public realm, and buildings, even though solid, forbidding, and perhaps off-putting, like the building I showed you, can have a moment of openness, freshness, and visual excitement. The passage and urbanscape that this creates is tremendously important in our practice. We're not just interested in the building, we want to see the terrain and the building kind of collapse into each other. And the moment of looking out and looking in, never possible before in that landmarked building, is now a gesture that connects all the galleries. Sometimes you want to go to the worst part of a place to make change. And the question is, when you're bordered by a building of the 1920s and a building of the 1880s, what's the response? And this was the trash collection and delivery area for this school campus in Providence. And this is that same area now, with a building that's no more than 5,000 square feet, but bridges the old and the new and the old again. And it's a kind of bridge building that simply glues certain historic resources together with something quite transparent. And it takes the back of the site, the inner portion of that K-12 campus, and brings a kind of Apple Store or life to it for the students to use and gather in every day. I show you these things because these things all contributed to our sense of how to approach 5757 South University. And Penn, a project which I'm very honored to have very close to the one by Todd and Billy, is a music building that was in a very unappealing, unwelcoming brick landmarked building, a building that needed care. And it had a certain rhythm, it has a certain structure, it has a certain organizational quality to it. And part of our work at our firm is in research to understand better the historic building, but also in understanding the way in which the visual aspect of the building will either connect, contrast, or be in dialogue with something new. So some studies of how we would make a substantial addition, really make a new building, one building, not a building with an addition, but a complete coherent building incorporating the 19th and 21st centuries. And then the view of the building that is now the music building, incorporating all those generations. The back of the site was haphazard and complicated because, of course, you have very historic facade there with historic additions. And this is that site now. Transparency, visibility, a relationship of materials, but not a slavishness about materials, and some notion of being able to carry the kind of set lines or spandrel lines or kind of organizational strategy that informs the first building into the second building. Those things really show in the work we're trying to generate from our practice. Inside, we love to see the old and have it be part of every day's experience. And outside, we want to show people what's going on in a building. Privacy is great, but contrast with privacy means that more people see every aspect of the music program in this building. Sometimes there are very improbable changes, and this jail, which we undertook with Cambridge 7 in Boston, is now a rockin' hotel called the Liberty. And it is one of the hottest spots in Boston. Maybe that's an oxymoron, like Boston isn't so hot, but it is actually really a very inappropriate place most of the evenings. And the restoration of this building was, of course, very much, very complicated to build an advocacy for a jail building, especially one that had been one of the very tough edges of Boston. But this jail is now a remarkable success, and it says that new life, this was the cell block inside with all of the different watchtower systems, the catwalks that went around it. And on a Thursday night, you can come to the Liberty, and those catwalks will be where there is a Russian model night. And it's really a great, great place. Those are different kinds of projects, but their improbability and their success makes me believe that we only need to look to the world around us to know what we might make, to the existing buildings around us often, to know what our cities might become. And sometimes, as I said with Wheeler, the smallest gesture can make a big difference. And I show you this just before I show you Chicago, so that you can see that sometimes walls coming down are really helpful to the way an institution greets the public and welcomes visitors. So this tiny pavilion of a couple of hundred square feet and its water and landscape bring people into a building that previously said, go away. And the little interventions here, just simple stair, and the renovation and restoration of the monumental spaces have made an oasis for people in the middle of a very difficult part of downtown. So let's talk about Chicago for just a minute. It's a fantastic project. Steve and David Green have made it remarkable. It doesn't have a name yet, Steve, so we're looking for one. But it consists, of course, of the main iconic building by Riddle, and the building extends the campus, but was originally designed to cut off itself from the campus and be alone. It wasn't part of the university. And of course, on the other end of it is the Roby House next to the Vignoli building. So the whole idea of taking on a project that extends the campus and terminates in the Roby building and the Roby House and the Vignoli building was what we would fondly call in our studio, no pressure. It also has the characteristic known to Chicago of these internal alleys, and the building was built in stages, it's disconnected, and you've seen in the gestures that I've shown you quickly that we care about access, we care about the walls tumbling down when they can tumble down, about bringing people in and making places vibrant. So this is a rendering of the plan for 5757, and you'll see here that the alley is gone away, and our collaboration with Olin Landscape Architects has given birth to this incredibly exciting new landscape here at the front on 58th Street. And there are other gestures here as well. The colonnade on the right, which is all glass and steel, the double height view into the seminar rooms, the connecting stairs and tower, which the buildings were never connected properly. And below grade, in the front terrace, we're building a 90-seat new classroom for the economics and research program that's going into this building. And those small windows looking up are part of the walk in the landscape terrace. And then internally, we have many challenges about how to use these rooms that were ecclesiastical rooms or liturgical rooms. And we're turning a number of them into very innovative new centers. This is a graduate center, very high-tech, very informal, great for gathering, wonderful light, a really special place for a very important group of students at U of C who haven't previously been able to be part of the department in this direct way. So we're trying to build community. And we've also had some great finds. I'm being very selective about this for time, but here's the attic, and here's the new graduate lofts. We have about 70 positions up here for graduate students, all built into a renovated area that has never previously been used. I'm particularly excited about the generations of buildings that are associated with this project. First, there's the Riddle building, which is early 20th century. Then there are the 3 row houses that are all part of South Woodlawn. And then behind them, speaking to us, I hope with the right touch and the right timbre, is a new building which takes this former alley, and that is the back of 5757 South University right there, this former alley and back lot area of the row houses. The row houses will be restored and transforms it into a real extension of the campus, a kind of internal green space muse. And whether this is a long-term plan, which it is, or we can do some of it more immediately, it's so exciting to be working in this way, where we can look at the gesture of a 3-story new research building, very flexible, the renovation and recouping of a truly remarkable building at the center or heart of a very important area of the campus, and then interventions that deal largely with a vocabulary that's very crisp and light, steel, glass, intervening where it needs to, and leaving the building alone and trying to restore it and retrieve it wherever possible. Overall, as Steve said, the idea is to extend the campus. You'll see the Roby House way up there on the left and the Vignoli building, the Booth School on the right, to extend the campus fabric through pedestrian, landscape, lighting initiatives, and to really roll and fold in a space that was distant and remote to the heart of campus community at the university. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can I have the first slide up, please? James Carpenter, and I just was involved in the university, actually a bit by coincidence, I guess. Steve mentioned that. I came here, I guess it was about 3.5 to 4 years ago, for the first time at the invitation of a group of postdoctoral students who were in the physics program, and they were sponsoring a weekend celebration of one of their mentors in the physics department, Sidney Nagel, and I was invited to come and give a brief talk, which was inserted within a full day of presentations by many, many years of graduates of the school, all speaking about their own research work. So I think that my own participation in that day of lectures was a bit of a relief to all the serious physics that was going on. But my own work is really focused on light, and I think in that respect, I come to architecture in a quite a different way, I think, than many people do approach it. And I originally did study architecture, but became, during my time in school, I became fascinated with light, specifically exploration of light, the manifestation of light, and how we experience light, basically, in nature, and how we can possibly transform those experiences that we associate with very fundamental experiences of nature, how we could transpose that into the built environment. So just briefly, I've just put in a few very early projects which I think speak a little bit to this idea of research and theory in light, and these are early projects where using film primarily to explore light after having studied architecture, moved into film and sculpture, but basically a small river in Puget Sound with a series of cameras over the surface of the river, and those cameras are basically focused down into the activities that take place in the river, so that the sequence of images that are then reprojected in a gallery or museum basically show the migration of salmon moving up through the river, this whole phenomenon of migration taking place before you and moving across the floor of a museum. And what is of interest in this film really is the alteration of the timing of the film, and what happens when you change the timing of a film. Different pieces of information arise, and you see qualities of light in the surface of the river that you would not otherwise observe. So the film was a means by which one could extract qualities of light that we see but don't necessarily acknowledge. And similarly in projects, as I began to turn back towards working in architecture, this is a project actually with Ed Barnes, who was the architect of the Smart Museum on the university campus, a window in Indianapolis, a window for a building where the client really wanted a clear glass window, basically, a window that they could look out of, look over the beautiful landscape, and then basically setting the stage for a clear glass window, but how would one activate the space, and developing a glass structure which basically takes the movement of the sun, projects that light into the building, and one sits in the space and observes sort of the movement of clouds across the sky in one image and the movement of leaves in the other image. So there's a superimposition of sky plane and landscape brought into the architecture in a very cinematic way. So this idea of how light can basically capture things that we don't observe sort of underlies a lot of the work and research we do in our studio. And this is a project done 10 or 12 years ago in Australia, but it's really speaking about investigations of light. So this is a series of mass entryway, a threshold for the Olympic Park in Sydney. And what we're doing here is over this pedestrian bridge, as you can see in this image here, a series of these masts which actually project mist pumped up out of the river and a mirror in the distance that tracks the sun. So the sun comes down, hits this mirror, and the beam of light is projected through the mist so that one can effectively create these mirages or forms in space in the middle of the day. So it's really an investigation of how we can take sunlight and manifest it in a built work. So these types of explorations really find their way into larger scale projects, and an issue which I think we're very focused on is this idea of light in the public realm. And this is the reconstruction of Tower 7 in New York, a project done with Skidmore. And the base of the building is this large concrete vault housing electrical transformers. And of course, the issue was how one can transform that type of a volume into something that feels very light and dynamic and activates public spaces. And by cladding the building in a system of prismatic stainless steel prisms that we developed, the whole building takes on this very active, responsive effect relative to daylight on the right-hand side, and then the entire curtain wall, which you see on the left-hand side. So the building is very specific to its location and gives back to the environment the qualities of light that are unique to that particular spot. And these were the works that I showed that day here at the university during that lecture, and Steve happened to attend that lecture. And then shortly after the lecture came and asked me to look at a project which we ended up executing with a local architectural firm and landscape firm, Bauer Latosa. But this again is the plaisance that Steve was talking about. The original plan for the plaisance and the original idea of linking the lake with a canal over to the park to the west. So this is a superimposition of that midway if it were to be flooded the way it was envisioned by Olmsted. And then the idea just came to mind that we should really treat these crossings as bridges, and bridges that really give you a sense of crossing water, so a sense of light reflecting off of water, and the bridge basically floating above the landscape. And these are marking, the red marks are the two that have been completed to date, and the third bridge in the distance, which is under construction. But the idea here was an identity, obviously, for the neighborhood, identity for the university, the connectivity of both campuses of the university using light, and I think sort of the introduction of a very refined and very crafted series of elements, and that craft and refinement in a very modern way refers back to the craft and refinement that one finds in the original Gothic buildings. So there's a resolution of detailing that's comparable, I believe, to some of the original old buildings, but they are these 40-foot tall masts that are illuminated, and a handrail system that's also illuminated. And it's meant to give light in a very different way than we often think of light. I mean, normally street lights, the light is coming down and creating a pool of light on the ground. These lights, as you can see, the light is basically given off horizontally. So the figure and individuals moving past these objects are illuminated in a very different way. And it's much more engaging, and I think much more involved in terms of engaging the people that pass across it. So it leaves you with this sense of coherency, linking the campuses together. And I think that there is a movement afoot, as Steve had mentioned, of using light as a way of linking other parts of the campus together in the future. So this approach to light is something that we've tried to carry forward on this new project, which I'll mention in just a moment. But the idea of light is completely specific to its location. And this is just jumping to the opposite conditions of light, where you're dealing with very, very intense Middle Eastern light on a campus for a museum, and how does one deal with those intensities of light, but actually build all glass buildings. So these are a series of small pavilions built and expanding a museum complex, about 200,000 square feet of space within an existing campus, but using very small scale buildings, very intimate spaces and excavations in the landscape. So light in this case is controlled and kept away from the buildings through a whole sequence of developments. And this is moving down into a below ground passage where at times you're up to 50 feet below ground, but it feels as if you're very close to the surface and engaged with the landscape or engaged with the garden. So landscape, light, and sense of protection were all elements that were critical to developing this project. And those same characteristics of engaging people with light is really the core of this project, which we're really just at the very beginning of this. Obviously the building was just taken down, but it's the new physics laboratory building, both for molecular engineering and for physics, right on Ellis, and it's across from Helmut Jahn's library here. And we're working with HOK, and specifically with Eric Anderson at HOK, and it's a collaborative process, and I think that that's also perhaps something that we bring to our work is a sense of collaboration, which is also part and parcel of the type of work that goes on in these buildings or these facilities, the collaboration between different scientists and different partners. But the idea here is to have remarkable qualities of light come into the workspaces and into the office spaces and public spaces. So just some details of the materials that will be used on the exterior envelope for the building, with a fin, sort of this refractive fin that brings more light into the individual office spaces. These very sort of dynamic spandrel panels on the building, and some early models of bringing more light into the individual offices as they go forward. So we're looking forward to this. The work is being just taken down, the building taken down at the moment, and the actual new construction will start later this year. But light, again, is the organizational principle for the building, and will be a place of studying light in the future. So, great, thank you.
Okay, this is our office, and this is another art building that we did a number of years ago.
So we're showing 4 projects, one of which is the Logan Center, and 3 projects that we're going to show relate in some way to that. This is at Johns Hopkins, and it was a competition won and a building made some 10 years ago, but it was a performing arts center. And what you can see in the plan is that there are actually 3 buildings that are created around a central courtyard.
So one of the things that we feel about our architecture is that we don't want the buildings to be objects in a landscape. We really want them to make spaces. And so when we make a building, we're trying to also make the space around it. And so here you can see very clearly that there's a central triangular courtyard.
And whether it's a closed campus or an open campus, as Chicago is attempting to do, being both open and closed, it is the principle of the campus is the campus, the plane on which we all walk. It is the campus plane. In this case, it's a sloped site, and here we are building our buildings into the land. They appear to be 1 story tall here because we're actually cutting into the land. It's a Neo-Georgian campus, so we've made our buildings entirely out of wood-molded brick.
But at the upper level where you see the glass, that's really the college level. And where you see these people walking down, they're essentially sort of retaining walls that cut into the ground. So we're very interested in making buildings that are heavy and solid.
And this has to do with the values, I think, of institutions, particularly one like the University of Chicago, which is to say that these are values that endure, lives endure, and indeed buildings will last much longer than our lives.
Just a detail of the fountain, cast bronze, an interior space with light, an oculus that goes up to catch light at the very top. And then once again, we're at really the grade level of the campus.
Using the rooftops of the buildings. Actually, these are the painting studios where the students tumble out onto the roofs and paint inside and out. Project at the University of Pennsylvania. Here we are actually set between 2 historic buildings, Town Hall 1906, Cope and Stewartson, and Moore Hall 1912 by Paul Cray. We removed a building here to make our also small building. It's called Skirkanich. But we felt that both of these buildings, the building on the right actually was a different college altogether than the building on the left, and so they had never been connected before, and in fact the levels between the 2 didn't connect. At the same time, we needed to walk right through that space, which is, I should say, the blue space where the yellow arrow is passing, and we ascend essentially 10 feet from the right-hand side to the left-hand side where we're moving up toward the Ann Beha building she just showed us.
So this is a building that actually plugs a gap and then tries to connect in 3 axes. So you can see that it's vertical and then a kind of north, south, east, west axes, making a circle of the existing buildings, and also making a new courtyard behind it.
Section through our building shows Moore on the right and Town on the left, and our building essentially serving as the bridge between the 2, but also a kind of vertical element between them.
This is a bioengineering building. Penn is a very brick-bound campus, and we both wanted to make a connection materially to the other buildings and use brick. At the same time, we wanted to separate ourselves. This bioengineering building is supposed to be the new entrance to a kind of science quadrangle. And so we used a brick that was molded and then also sort of distressed by running it through machines, and then had it glazed by another company that gave us this sort of green glaze, and we said that that referred back to the ivy.
So the way of connecting to the campus actually is by not connecting to the two adjacent buildings, but by respecting them as unique architectural elements of themselves. So we walk in under this canopy and then essentially right through the building without entering, or begin to pass up in the stairway here and then connect to the right and the left and vertically through the building.
So the street is lined with ginkgo trees, and we originally had a kind of atrium space because we're always trying to make that connection to the sky. We lost it because there are huge mechanical systems that had to go up on top of the roof, and we were also challenged with a budget. So we went to Heath Tile and asked them to make these glazed tiles and asked them to make them the color of the ginkgo leaves. So it kind of creates its own light. And we sort of saw that when we looked at the trees in the fall. It was as if they were illuminated.
This is the first time we tried to experiment with a poured-in-place triple fire stair, which we've further experimented with here at the University of Chicago. At any rate, this seems like a kind of Escher system of poured-in-place concrete. We want to make all stairs places to be, whether they're fire stairs or not, and turn the fire stairs into the primary stairs. So it's a dynamic and interesting space, and at Skirkanich, it's really half the height that we've now experimented with at the Logan Center, where we've now extended it up to 11 stories in height.
So when Todd says triple, he means 3 bays going across, which allows the flights of the stairs not to sort of sit on top of each other and lets you make 2 or 3 story high spaces, because we really wanted these fire stairs to be social spaces. And in the glass section, that's the sort of fire stair that goes up and down. And here you can see the first of the 2 courtyards that were made by, as I said, making this building a kind of plug building.
And so actually, there's a very small space between our building and town in the distance, more to our left, and a Kieran Timberlake building to the right. It's a tiny space, and yet we decided to make it an even smaller space. So it's not always necessarily that one needs to make a big space. There are intimate spaces that are needed on all campuses. Secret gardens, we'd call them. This project is in New York City. It says that it's at Lincoln Center. It's not Lincoln Center at all. It's a space that was made by a developer near Lincoln Center, and Lincoln Center decided to take this T-shaped space that had really been a space only used by the homeless, and turn it into something that would be dynamic and important to the entire community, not just to Lincoln Center.
So this is Broadway. Here you can see this is Columbus, and Lincoln Center is over here. So Lincoln Center said, we'll pay for this space, but it's a public space, and allows people from Broadway to walk through, have a glass of wine, buy tickets, lower price tickets the day of the performance, and sit and relax, and potentially go to Lincoln Center. But essentially, it's a public space. It's open to everyone.
365 days a year from 8 in the morning till 10 at night. It's actually not got a very handsome context. A terrible building here on the left, which is used for it by the AAA, and an old hotel on the right, and a developer building above it. But it still was a passageway, and we decided to try to make it, we decided a kind of front porch to Lincoln Center.
So you can see that there are these open oculi cut in the ceiling. Some of them actually connect to daylight. Some of them are artificially enhanced with artificial lights. And you can see also in this section that there's a very large screen, a very large planted green wall, and a mural that was created in collaboration with a textile artist.
So on pleasant days, these 16-foot tall doors are open, and it's open to the natural breezes and the weather. On cold days, of course, they're closed and it's a heated space, and on the very hottest days, they also are closed and it's air conditioned. But we have, at least when we did it 2 years ago, these were the 2 largest green walls in New York City. And they have grown beautifully, and again, this is a place really all people enjoy being any time of the year.
We used stone on the floor and stone on the walls. Once again, as Todd said, we want to make spaces that will last much longer than we do. And we also want to make buildings that feel heavy, because when there are then openings in those spaces, you really feel the connection to the outdoors. So we're making closed spaces so you can appreciate open spaces. And here you see this mural that was made by Claudia Youngstra.
Claudia's a friend of ours, lives in Friesland, and she has 200 sheep and felts. And here she is working in Holland, making this mural that we've got. Actually, they're one on either side. She uses natural dyes. She grows the plants and uses her own dyes and her own sheep. And felting, as you know, is a pretty simple system of simply taking soap and water and the wool of sheep that has been cleaned and dyed, and essentially weaving it together in a very ancient way, just by the fibers themselves interlocking. So the space is alive and active in the evening. One of the reasons that we're showing this, that we really want, and although we can't show it yet, we're hoping that the Logan Art Center has some of this quality. Working with Bill Michael, the next project and final project we'll show is in fact Logan Center. We won this project on a competition a number of years ago. This is a diagram of what our thought was on the right-hand side, that we see that Chicago is a series of wonderful towers, basically in a very horizontal plane. So our idea was a tower and a base. And this actually was our competition entry. I look at it now, it looks awful, but somehow we won by this idea. One of the things we were saying, though, is that we wanted this to be taking all of the programmatic elements that were there, and they wanted to be interlocked and mixed, and we wanted to mix them horizontally and vertically. And I think we've done that, but in a much simpler way. We wanted to make sure that at the top of our tower, this would be a destination. Well, the budget and actually programmatic requirements eventually won the day, and we have a simpler building and I think a much better building for it.
So on this lower building with the skylights are primarily studio spaces for the visual arts. We have theaters that are back here. They have green roofs. And then we have the existing
Midway Studios.
Midway Studios. This building and Midway Studios make a courtyard. Here you can see a room which is actually a seminar room where the windows slide back so it can be a seminar terrace during good days. And then we have a very large performance space here. But in the vertical building, what we're trying to do is mix the program up so that people will use the idea of fire stairs to look at what other people are doing creatively.
And although we're still in as Steve said, we're in the punch list stage, we're also in the testing stage for this project. Students are beginning to use it, and we're both finishing the work, making some changes to the work, but this is a difficult image to look at. But Billy, show the street that essentially runs from the south to the north.
Oops.
Moving over, no, the street in our building.
Oh.
In
Here,
our
you
building.
show it.
Okay. Where's this thing? Which way is this thing?
The
Okay.
top, the top. Here.
Okay, there you go. Essentially, and this is an earlier rendering, we basically have a street that runs right through the building here. At the same time, we're using this courtyard that is the residual space between the Midway Studios and our tower, which is here. All of the white space here indicates public interior space. There's a loading dock, which is very important to the construction studio, the art studios, a gallery at the first level, a black box theater, a stage theater, a music auditorium, and as we move up through the building, a film theater and dance spaces at the lower level.
So this project is,
A whole series of other spaces.
we're working in association with Halliburton and Root, and with James Baird, who's sitting in the front row. But here you can see, this is an early section, but it's showing that it's a real mixture of different kinds of programs. So that this we call kind of Tower of the Arts. It is a combination of more transparent glass and more reflective glass. Here you can see along this side is one of the stairways that we sort of started to look at Skirtanich. And we used a limestone that is much more variegated and a kind of warmer limestone than the limestone on the other side of the Midway.
And clearly there's an allusion here to, I would suppose, a Gothic tower. So we could talk about that. That is the outdoor terrace. This is the 35-foot tall space at the top, which is a performance space, and an outdoor terrace up here. So in fact, I think it'll be a very, very lively tower and a very lively street that passes between the tower and the base.
This is a small cantilevered piece. It's the sort of end point of that street that Todd's saying runs through the building. On the lower level, it runs directly through at grade, and on the upper level, there it expresses itself through these small cantilevered rooms that are part of a long walkway.
The south side of the building.
We used a combination of felt, which we designed, but this was not made by Claudia Youngstra. It's a commercially produced felt, but we gave the designs to the felters, and then it's mechanically produced. And we also worked again with Heath tile, this time using a kind of standard tile, but a tile that was dipped in a sort of darker gray pigment to sort of make these pencil lines across the facade. This is the lobby outside of the theater space.
One of the stairways in that same lobby.
Very theatrical.
And the fire stairs here, once again, using these tiles, in this case, partially dipped tiles, so that the stairs are poured in place, but the walls are animate as you move up and down them.
This is the space outside of the cinema, and once again, it's this commercially made felt that we designed, kind of snowstorm in Chicago feeling, I don't know.
Another one of the same kinds of tapestries of felt.
So this occurs in some of the double or triple height spaces that are part of that vertical tower. So we're trying to connect people not only programmatically, but also actually in space. And then this is just a view from the top floor of the large ensemble space with the 30-foot high ceiling. It's still under construction, and we think it will be finished. We know it will be finished by the time that the building opens and has its really formal opening this October. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope that it comes through clearly how honored and privileged we are to work with such an incredible group of talented architects at the University of Chicago. Just tremendously satisfying. Maybe I'll kick this off then by beginning. So each one of you is doing your first project here in Chicago, a city known for architectural innovation, the home of Sullivan and Wright and Mies. And so I wonder, we're certainly very much benefiting from your marks on the city. And I wonder what you're taking away from Chicago that might influence your next projects. And have you taken the Chicago Architectural Foundation boat tour yet? Good.
Well, I will simply say that it's an extraordinary city. And yeah, the greatest architectural city, honestly, as much as I adore New York and believe in it, I do think that architecture here is at the most sublime level in the U.S. And so I guess that I would say I feel humbled to work in the city, and I feel, I hope I have become a better architect for it. We absolutely were afraid to take on the people who did steel so much better than we did, so we decided to continue with our heavy game and use poured in place concrete as much as possible and mass, and then contrast it with light. So I would just simply say I don't know, other than to feel that don't know that I'll be asked to work again here in Chicago, but it was an honor to do so.
I just think for myself, just the streets, obviously the streets in Chicago, just the scale of streets and the openness of the city grid just has this remarkable sense of generosity, and these buildings do sit in a very sublime way on this open field. And I think that that for myself is something I certainly will take away from working here, but I think I'm very fortunate to say that I will be spending more time here. So that's something I'm looking forward to next fall, because I'll be teaching at the university in the physics department for briefly. So I'll look forward to learning more about the city.
I really appreciate the university's advocacy for historic preservation, but their lack of, their bravery as well about contemporary work within the historic context. I'll say candidly, knowing General Theological Seminary as I do in New York and many of the other theological seminaries in Cambridge and in Boston, I don't think if the university hadn't taken on 57 South University, I'm not sure it had another guardian angel. Those kinds of buildings are really, really hard to reuse creatively. And the more we get to know it, the more we realize that it welcomes change if it's used in a natural way, if change is brought to it in a natural way, but it's not the kind of building that is ready to be changed in a brutal way. And that's, it's strong that way. It tells you back. Don't, to lay off, which is good. But for me, it relates to just what Todd was saying, not only a respect for the city, but sort of a better understanding of the role of institutions in a city, that they themselves have not only extraordinary vision, but also stewardship for the built fabric of a city in ways that if they weren't here, we would all be the lesser for it.
Thank you. I think there are two folks with microphones. Yep, okay. Any questions from the audience? In the front?
While we're waiting, Steve, I want to reiterate the respect we have for the University of Chicago, in particular, in our case on this side of the table, that you are attempting to reach south across the Plaisance and to animate and activate that part of the campus, and also really begin to attend to issues that are even for the community that is further south. I think this is terribly important. I do, of course, agree that it's great to this issue of stewardship of the existing structure that you've got on the northern side of the campus. But I think that this attempt to reach across this gap is huge. I think you're just in the beginning of this. And looking at that image that Jamie put up of the Olmsted plan with water there, I still like to see the water come back, personally.
I think it would be great.
It's often ice,
Yeah.
but that works too. Is there a question in front?
Yeah, and Todd, I think you anticipated my question. I wanted to know, I know you all have done work for other academic institutions. What is unique about working with the University of Chicago?
Well, I think here, more than any other time, we see commitment by the faculty, sort of, and their advocacy for their positions and their students and their programs. I've seen stronger than any other. I mean, I feel that there's an incredible commitment for the program that they've fought for and for the requirements that are there. In fact, I found many times, as you remember, I tried to get people to back off some of these requirements, and they didn't. And so it was a struggle. I mean, the fact is that there is a strong faculty and a great community. So I would say that I certainly feel that here.
And if I could tag on to that, one of the very first meetings I went to on the Logan Center for the Arts was a presentation by Todd and Billy and James and the rest of the team of the schematic design, and there was a very thorough review of every program element in that 184,000 square foot building. And the very first question from one of the faculty members of this oversight committee was basically an acknowledgement at the team having done a miraculous job of shoving it all in. And his question, though, was, but where's the capaciousness? Where's the sense, the sense of discovery, which is all about ultimately what ended up in this building is this wonderful, combination of not only quantitative but very much qualitative success. And I think it's a pleasure working with the faculty at the University of Chicago who are very much paying attention to that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. We fought for the qualitative issues. They fought for their quantitative issues. Within their quantitative issues were, of course, qualitative issues, but they had defined that, and so essentially I would say it was a struggle between the net and the gross, as it always is.
But I just wanted to say now that the students are taking over the building, it's very, very exciting, because I was saying to someone, I felt like what we tried to do is kind of make this sounds weird, but sort of try to make a little magic castle that was so full of strange places to be discovered, and that the kids would have a really good time finding those places and sort of colonizing them. And so when one of our people who worked on the team was doing punch list, she found on the blackboard a quote, I think it was from a Harry Potter book, that said, "Beware, the stairs are always changing." And indeed, if you walk up and down the stairs, which I hope some of you do, they are always changing.
Well, I would have to say, my building that I'm working on with my team in Gensler is a liturgical building, and it's going to become the Department of Economics. So there's a certain leap of faith, if you will, associated with God and mammon that immediately occurs.
Not a leap from faith.
No,
Okay.
it's whatever you say it is, Steve. And every joke that can be made has been made. But I really agree. I think the degree to which the faculty have been involved in the project, and many of the people who work closely with the faculty who are such advocates and great spokesmen for the faculty, the degree to which the faculty have commented and been involved is unusually not only robust but productive, extremely productive. And, when the faculty are talking about their spaces, they are talking about them in ways that are about the way they work, but also about the way they want to work with their students. And this is what you want to believe goes on in an academic institution, and it really does at University of Chicago. So for me, everybody has their stories, but like the first meeting I had with the faculty, I was like, well, I've been in this meeting for 20 minutes, and it's really obvious I know nothing about economics. But these guys know nothing about architecture. So we are definitely a good fit. We are an interdependent system, which is what economics is about. And I think that not only has the entire review group on the project had extraordinary imagination about what might be possible for the building, but they also have been extraordinarily understanding of the needs that an historic building carries with it. And those needs are financial, their needs of stewardship, their needs of kind of cultural recognition that this is an important building. So there's this understanding and discourse, if you will, about the different poles of the project and the way in which we're going to navigate to something that's really, hopefully really extraordinary. It's been unique.
There's a question over there.
Each of you have talked about institutional stewardship. There's another university in town. Would you care to, each of you, comment on Prentice Hospital by Bud Goldberg?
About what?
So there's, go ahead.
You take it.
There's a hospital building designed by Bertrand Goldberg as
yeah.
part of the Northwestern Campus Prentice Memorial. I don't know if you're familiar.
No, I can't really comment on it. I mean, it certainly has made the national news, as have recent buildings by Paul Rudolph. The most difficult part of preservation is our most recent past. That's the part that everyone struggles with the most. There are practitioners in the room who do a far better job than I can commenting on that kind of building. But the recent past, whether it be the extraordinary building at Columbus Circle by Edward Durrell Stone, or the whole litany of works by the kind of brutalists, those are national issues. They're national preservation issues. And the construction of those buildings makes them quite challenging to use adaptively. That's all I should say, because I don't know the hospital buildings, but I do know quite a lot about renovating buildings of the 20th century, and there are obstacles in the face of some of the reuse strategies for those buildings that are really tough. That's a complicated issue.
I'm unaware of the
Yeah.
issue specifically.
No, I don't think I know enough about the particulars, but I would say that I think it's interesting, it's true that the first thing we forget about is our most recent past, and then our children, we suddenly see our children attracted to things that we have given up on and moved away from. So I do think we ought to be very clear and aware that we should not only respect our past, which I think we all do, but we need to respect the past that comes right up to the present, and recognize that we will regret it if we throw it away too quickly, because times do change, and that past very soon will be seen as a treasure that we should have cared for and didn't. So I know that I've been there, and I know we've all been there, and it's certainly something that I think we, certainly as I get older, I'm more and more aware of, that it's being a problem of my own, and a problem of youth, and a problem of people who are always thinking about the present rather than the full spectrum of life. So I don't know any more to say than that.
So speaking of that whole spectrum, how would you encourage the University of Chicago to be thinking about its architectural evolution over the next 100 years? And what is to be learned from collegiate Gothic? You thought this would be easy.
Well, I think one of the things that collegiate Gothic has done is continue to exist. And so when it was built in a way that by people who believed that these buildings should not be 20-year buildings or 50-year buildings. You know, they were really building for generations. And so I think it's important when we do buildings on campuses that they are built to represent an aspiration, and that aspiration is tied to a strong sense of permanence and belief in the values of education and the institution.
I mean, I think one of our greatest challenges, and it's not about the University of Chicago, is to develop architectural parity between our community colleges, our state universities, our public resources, and our private institutions. The level of facilities at the University of Chicago, or I could be talking about MIT, or any of our other clients, and the level of facilities that are available to people with lesser means in this country on campuses is remarkable and notable. And what Billy is saying about the ability to build to last, take on a state client. Maybe it's different in Illinois, but take on a state client and try to build a building that will really last for them. That is a very tough thing to pull off. And there are some remarkable architects who I consider to be just brave, who take on those projects. You've got Richard Datner in New York. I mean, he's one of my heroes. The guy just takes on public work and builds good buildings, and he navigates. And I think it's heroic to try to bring that permanence and responsibility to the public sector. So you will always have access to great thinkers, great resources. You know, you build that. You build that because it's part of your culture. Our public sector doesn't have the same access entirely. And maybe one of my great hopes is that the lessons of construction and the lessons of quality and even the inexpensive things that you've been able to do, Steve, because you're so creative, would be exemplars to other institutions to try to find their own way towards a solution at that level.
I would like to say, relative to collegiate Gothic, don't be afraid of weight and toughness, beauty and delight. I think detail, whether it's the detail that we see in buildings in Chicago of the 1870s or the 1920s and the 1950s to the year 2000, detail is terribly important. And I see it in the work of Jamie. I see it in the work that Ann is appreciating and trying to continue, and I see it in our work. And I think that I don't think we have to literalize Gothic design. But I think we can look back and appreciate it for these things I've just described. A kind of sense of a configured campus where one really respects the ground plane and will walk through passageways and encounter moments throughout the campus itself.
Kind of following on that line, there's distance learning now, all the online stuff, what Stanford's doing, it's in the news quite a bit. What is the impact to having physical place, and what's the value of that, and how is that impacting the works with the change in how people learn?
I was talking about this with a colleague just before, and I'm doing another project at MIT that, MIT and Harvard have just announced that they will be doing global learning. They're confining it largely to, almost exclusively to their large lectures. They're not taking the seminar system and making that available. So, this is idea of distance learning coming from a major institution will be probably managed in some way. It's not everything being completely open, every experience being completely open. But I think it's got to have an impact. On the positive side, the impact is empowering people globally with as many tools as we can make available and breaking down the silos. On a really pedestrian level, the AV budgets are going out the window, because the idea of globally connecting everyone means that we're investing in technologies that are imperfect and expensive. They haven't come down the cost level yet. So just with my got to deliver on budget hat with Turner, we kvetch over the issue of how much technology we're putting in classrooms and how prepared everybody is to use all the technology. So that's another stretch on the budget. It's another imposition on the budget that's quite difficult. Architecturally, will it take American campuses and make them dissolve? I can't imagine it. It's so embedded in our culture to have the human experience of being somewhere for your education, wherever you can be, that you're personally there. That I don't think that's the discussion I've been part of. It's that it would dissolve the interface and community associated with the permanence of campuses. But Billy, maybe we shouldn't be building for 50 years if it's all going to become about silicon.
No,
But
it's not going to be.
it is that spirit of sort of the embedded and sort of the long-term nature of these campuses
Yeah.
that's carried forward through the distance learning.
Right.
I mean, it's sort of a component of that that's sort of just intuitively brought along. And I'd say the other
It takes
aspect
all
of
that
this,
with it.
yeah, the other aspect of this, I think, just certainly what we've experienced working with the physicists here, is their interconnectivity with other universities and campuses, where much of their work is really done online with colleagues elsewhere. So the whole nature of the lab and the sort of the institute is really much broader than we typically think of when it's confined to a singular building.
I certainly feel that the work for the economics department is on the cutting edge of that. There's a lot, because of the Becker-Friedman Institute, there's a lot of interest in the connectivity globally. And,
Well,
that's been
no
exciting.
question about that, but we're talking about architecture.
Yeah.
I would have said, I'm sorry, I think placemaking is as or more important than it ever was. And the sort of sense of a connection to a specific place as global technology, as distance learning exists, I think it's ever even more important to locate yourself on the surface of this earth. So I'd say it makes architecture, placemaking much more important. That's what we do. Other people will do that. I celebrate that. I think both things need to be happening. But I'm not going to imagine that buildings should be 50-year buildings because it's like imagining we shouldn't have books. I mean,
Well, I also think, the sort of technology is a tool. It's not a driver. And I would say that, we certainly use technology in our studios. You all do, if you're architects. But in the end, we also deal with real materials and things that are tactile. And I just think that they balance each other, that one doesn't supplant the other.
I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, to what extent is there a opportunity building on a campus to push the envelope a little bit and make buildings particularly smart? The AV budget was mentioned, but what about the AC budget?
Yeah. Well, all the windows will open at 5757. They have for almost 100 years. They're going to continue to open. There's some fundamental things in operating a building that are so important. And part of the pleasure of working with an older building is that they're often smart already. And we are catching up with how smart they are by letting them be what they need to be. So I'll just leave it alone at that. The natural ventilation is one of the aspects of existing buildings that I like the most. And their solar orientation is often really well construed. And I hope we're redeploying that full tilt.
well, I think the University of Chicago is committed to this, and I think all universities should be. The problem is there are many older systems in place that make it difficult for a particular building to shift over completely. I had advocated for a non-air conditioned building when we started, and I'm sorry, and I think it's still possible, but I think there are all sorts of reasons why that makes it very, very difficult. What we've got is as smart a building as we can make on the campus at this time. Yes, the windows do open. Yes, those north-facing skylights are getting a tremendous amount of natural light, and on the backside of them we have solar panels that face in just the right direction. The university is doing a good job, but the infrastructure of the university also needs to be able to change in order for the building itself to become particularly smart. It needs to fit within the system of the university. So I think you guys are working on that.
It is, as you say, it's a challenge. I mean, we don't conceive of our architecture as one-offs, but rather part of a whole system. And certainly the infrastructure has to be brought along and able to really benefit from that thinking.
I would like to say one more thing about it that's so interesting for me. As you showed a picture of your studio, which, can I send my resume? I'd love to work right in the atmosphere you described there. But, we work in open studios, but faculty do not. So let's just look at this issue for a minute. And it's an issue of universal workplace. As long as we continue to work in individual offices, we will take with us the ductwork, the temperature controls, the lighting, and all of the walls and sustainability issues associated with building a subdivided space. And yet in the New York Times, if you read last Sunday, they had a really well-balanced article about the dissatisfaction people have with open space, even in companies where the mission is shared open space, open communication, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't want to take this any further because it's not a unique University of Chicago issue. But there is an evolution in workplace thinking that is challenging for all of us. And we know that the individualization of office systems brings cost and impact to projects. So we need to think in the future, I think, about how we work as an academic community and what our standards are and how we start to rethink that a little bit. But it's everywhere. It's coast to coast. It's not a U of C issue at all. It's just an everywhere issue. But you know what I'm saying? Is that we're building real offices. Real offices bring real costs and real impact. And we're not ready yet, I think, in academic settings to say no more walls.
You keep trying. Subtle social engineering.
Yeah, that model got left in the airplane. Yeah. What'd you say?
Well, and each department obviously has its own criteria for their services. So for instance, in the new physics building we're doing, very, very high service requirements for the building. And obviously the building is as sophisticated as it can possibly be in terms of energy, performance, and all of the services for the building. But they are, just by their very nature, very demanding relative to the services required. So you do design the building to its maximum efficiency and sort of maximum performance. But each of them has totally different criteria based on the user. So
what makes a building smarter? The people inside it. So, I mean, I feel like it's, you do what you can do technologically at the time. Times are always changing. So the building needs to be a long-lasting building so it's a great container and can take the changes that the smart people inside decide they need to have.
On that note, thank you so much for